How's it going?
Good evening and welcome to Trad Queen Story Hour. Thank you so much for joining me tonight. Whisper was just asking me if I'm feeling better today, and I said no, but I'm feeling bad in different ways. And tonight my hair is like this, not because I really feel like making a style statement, like a fashion statement, but because I am very, very, very hot. I'm overheating. You're going to see me sweating, unfortunately, and there's nothing I can do about it. I've turned up the fan. Anything more is going to be too loud, but just stuck with this clammy feeling, and it's ridiculous. I'm not a huge fan. Hopefully I can talk to the doctor about this and see what the heck is going on. But Until then, I'm just not going to worry about it and keep doing my thing. I hope y'all are having a great Wednesday. Sorry I missed yesterday. I was not feeling it at all. It was terrible. But I think I'm going to take a slightly different approach this evening. We're going to talk about some more cultural stuff. We're going to touch on the politics and all the other stuff that brings everybody in. But at the end of the day, there are much more important things going on in the world, and it's absolutely necessary to address them. Now, I know that a majority of YouTube viewers are males. So today I'm going to be talking to you guys. I have some questions about male loneliness, and we're going to see if we can solve this problem over the course of tonight's conversation. No worries at all. Let's see what happens. Before we get started, I'm going to pitch you guys this question. I could not figure out what this tweet meant. So we're going to look at this article, and then we're going to read this tweet, and we're going to see what we come up with as far as this goes. From what I could see, no one was happy with the results of this poll, which usually means that there's an element of truth here. So let's read what Michael Tackett has to say. Michael Tackett works, where does he work? Yeah, works with Deputy Bureau Chief Associated Press. So AP. Don't love AP, not the best. Also not the worst. We're just going to roll with it. While most Republicans, 74%, say they would support him in November 2024, 53% of Americans say they would definitely not support him if he is the nominee. Another 11% say they would probably not support him in November 2024. Interesting. That doesn't sound positive, but let's read the article, because one of the things that Democrats have been noticing is that each time they try to indict President Trump or succeed at indicting him, he becomes more and more popular, which is very interesting. Now, I personally am espousing the view, as I have been for a long time, that the Democrats and the mainstream media, but I repeat myself, really, really want Trump to run again. They want a repeat of 2020, because I don't know if you guys remember, but Joe Biden didn't even have to campaign. He just sat in the basement and people voted against Donald Trump, 100%. Mr. Proxy says, boys, boys, boys. Yes, we love the boys cast here. We appreciate Ryan Long and Danny. I forget his last name. I don't forget Danny's last name. I can't pronounce it. I think it's Polishchuk. Can't remember. Let's read this. Trump enjoys strong support among Republicans. The general election could be a different story. Before we go on, this is something I've been wondering about for a while now. What percentage of American voters are Republicans? Do you guys know right off the tops of your head? Because I am very curious myself. Let's Google it real fast. Percentage. Who are Republicans? I am not a Republican. I am an independent. And I am happy to be so, because that means I'm not in thrall to any one politician. And I think that's the way it should be. U.S. political party preferences shifted greatly during 2021. Let's see what direction it shifted in. Looks like it shifted toward the Republican. Interesting. So looks like we have 47% who are Republican/lean Republican. Party preference shifts follow changes in presidential approval. Very interesting. So I'm assuming as Joe Biden's presidential approval has fallen, the number of people who are identifying as not Democrats has also risen. So here we have fourth quarter of 2021. It's a couple of years ago, but kind of see where we end up. We're at 43 U.S. yearly averages. Okay. 46% Democrat, 43% Republican. So there are too many percentages in this story, which I think is part of why it's confusing. I will say here that the number of independents has shot up, which is really interesting. Not surprising, especially considering that I went from identifying as a member of the Republican Party to identifying as a member of the non-affiliated/independent party. Doesn't leave much for the fringe, says Mr. Proxy. Interesting. Serenko says, guessing 34%. It looked like it was 38%. Let's go back to where we were. Scroll up. Let's take a final number and see if we can go from there. 47% looks like. Okay, maybe in 2021. Anyway, let's see what they have to say in the AP. After every new indictment, Donald Trump has boasted that his standing among Republicans only improves, and he has a point. Nearly two-thirds of Republicans, 63%, now say they want the former president to run again, according to a new polling from the Associated Press NORC Center for Public Affairs Research. That's up slightly from the 55% who said the same in April when Trump began facing a series of criminal charges. 7 in 10 Republicans now have a favorable opinion of Trump, an uptick from the 60% who said so 2 months ago. But in a crucial warning sign for the former president and his supporters, Trump faces glaring vulnerabilities heading into the general election, with many Americans strongly dug in against him. I have been pointing out that this is a problem for Donald Trump. Everybody in the U.S. knows who Donald Trump is, right? Everybody's got an opinion, whether it's good or bad. And that's just the way it is. You're not going to change it. Part of the reason I don't think they're going to do any kind of mugshot for him is initially because people tend to get mugshots because law enforcement is afraid they will flee. There is no way in heck that Donald Trump is going anywhere. Everyone knows who he is. He's the single most recognizable person on earth right now. And I think that a mugshot would do more for his bona fides than pretty much anything else. I think it would be hilarious. Let's do it and see what happens. We're living in clown world. Nothing really seems to matter anymore, but it is kind of interesting to look at the numbers. Many Americans strongly dug in against him. While most Republicans, 74%, say they'd support him in November, 53% of Americans said they'd definitely not support him if he is the nominee. Another 11% say they'd probably not support him in November 2024. So, from a completely neutral position, I would be happy if Trump got the nomination. Whatever. Who cares what happens? We have no idea. We're too far out. Excuse me, I'm dying. I don't know. I don't see any way that he persuades independents moving forward. And that's just my 2 cents. I'm not a pollster. I'm not Rich Barris. I'm not the people who conduct these polls. But at the end of the day, I think that people are strongly enough set in their views of him, including independents, that he's actually probably not going to be able to persuade them one way or the other. Now, one of the things that might change people's impressions of him is watching the mainstream media's treatment of him and watching like Fani Willis's treatment of him. I think that's convinced a lot of people that he's the right person, the right bull to release in the China shop, because they're like, what is happening? Screw these people. Here's what we want to do. We want to vote for this person. Smack him in the face. Texas Rangers, thank you. Hi, Andy. I hope you are well. Andy is on his way home. Hi, Lydia. Hope you feel better. I am feeling better already. Still just a little bit shiny and sweaty. I'm a Republican. Appreciate Lyds being an independent. I like the idea of being an independent because I have a set of values that don't really shift according to party. And in my experience, the GOP has not represented those values well. They've done some things better than the Democrats have. I've never considered myself remotely close to a Democrat. But at the end of the day, nobody really aligns with me on everything, and that's okay. Like, I was talking to Andy about this the other day. I was like, look, I consider myself an unwilling hipster. I like all this stuff, and I wish that other people would get on board with them, but they never do. I was like, Andy, every single kind of perfume that I've ever really loved, they immediately stop making because no one else likes it. And I'm just like, okay, is my taste really that weird? Apparently, and I think it's very much the same in politics, unfortunately. Let's see what the AP concludes. The findings bolster the argument that some of Trump's rivals for the Republican nomination, who laud his tenure as president but warn that he can't win in a general election when he must compete for votes beyond the GOP base. This is an important warning note that I wish people would pay attention to, because if you try to say something like that on Twitter, there are enough fanatics for Trump that will come out and tell you that you're crazy, you're believing lying polling, and it's just like, look, I am trying to warn you about something that might happen. This is something that we need to consider if we actually want the GOP to win in 2024. Mr. Proxy, see, we are more than a two-party system. I don't know. Independents are something different. Independents are like the wishy-washy. They're not wishy-washy per se, but they can lean one way or the other, and it's a matter of kind of appealing to those people, and it means appealing to them on the individual basis, which I personally think is good, because I think we should be talking to each voter as an individual. But I'm not sure what role independents will play in 2024, but it won't be nothing. I think it'll be very much down to how Trump can change their minds about him. But Trump lost the popular vote in 2016 campaign, attaining the presidency only by winning a majority in the Electoral College. That is true and correct. And then they go on to talk about voter fraud, which I am not going to because YouTube does not like that talk. So now I have hiccups. That's great. That's fun. Anyway, St. Miles says independents are still a power force. Yeah, I think they're really important because, and I appreciate the stance of being an independent because you need to have your own position. And it shouldn't be swayed by a politician. Anyone who can be swayed by a politician, look, you need to get your priorities straight before you start trying to think about voting. Because if you're going to go along with whatever politician comes along, you're just going to fall for anything, as the old saying goes, if you don't stand for something. But let's read about the sins of Joe Biden. Now that we've been reading about the foibles of Donald Trump, the most exciting character in politics right now. Biden uses his creepy whisper. Oh, good, the creepy whisper. I love the creepy whisper. To claim his climate and tax law is working as its 1-year anniversary is overshadowed by his poor handling of deadly Maui wildfires. Yeah, so I guess he's finally going to go. About darn time. Not soon enough, in my mind. This is not making him more popular. Biden marked 1-year anniversary of the Inflation Reduction Act. I'm not here to declare victory on the economy, he said. Yeah, no kidding. The economy is not doing well. Biden got his signature whisper and even a reference to ice cream. What? I cannot take these people seriously. They told us when Biden was elected, the adults were back in charge, and this is not. This has been the most untrue thing they said today. These are not adults. This is insanity. This is stark incompetence, and I am really ready for a different party to be in charge. I don't even care at this point. Mix it up, whatever. Don't care. Just want these people out of office. It's absolutely insane what they're doing. President Joe Biden used his infamous whisper to declare his Inflation Reduction Act is working, but his 1-year anniversary celebration has been overshadowed by his own handling of the Hawaii wildfires, Donald Trump's latest indictment, and the absence of Senator Joe Manchin. In a packed event in the East Room at the White House, Biden claimed his law increased the number of jobs, decreased the inflation rate, and cut the deficit. He even got the ice cream reference in. I'm not here to declare victory on the economy, he said. We have more work to do. Yeah, no kidding, Joe. And he made what is becoming a signature move. He leaned down to the microphone to whisper to make his point, declaring Bidenomics is working. Biden and his cabinet have fanned out to tout the benefits of the $1.5 trillion social services law that gave consumers incentives to go green, expanded Obamacare, and asked the wealthy, along with corporations, to, quote, pick up the tab. This is according to the Daily Mail. I'm sure that Joe Biden would tell you they just want them to pay their fair share, probably in a whisper too. But instead, the White House has had to push back on criticism Biden hasn't adequately addressed the wildfires in Maui, which have devastated the island and killed at least 106 people. Additionally, Trump was indicted Monday for the 4th time, which brings a total of 91 charges against the former president and took attention away from Biden. Finally, Biden's celebration in the East Room of the White House on Wednesday had one conspicuous absence: Democratic Senator Joe Manchin, a key player in getting the legislation passed. Manchin helped write and name the bill, but stayed away as Democrats cheered Biden on during his remarks. Probably a little bit of regret there. Holy cow. And Biden was in a celebratory mood, bringing up his favorite desserts. I want to say one thing to your children. I know some really great ice cream places around here, and Daddy owes you, so talk to me afterwards. Guys, children, small fry, do not speak to Joe Biden under any circumstances. He will try to sniff you and be incredibly inappropriately gropey with you. Stay away from Joe Biden. I don't care if he's the president. He's the creepiest man. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. His creepiness knows no bounds. And you know what people were talking about the other day? I think it was Brad Palumbo who was saying, if he, talking about Afghanistan, talking about how he's either deeply immoral or senile. And I said, pretty sure you can be deeply immoral, and then once you reach a certain age, your senility takes over, and it tells people exactly who you are. And I think that's exactly what's happening here. And that's something that I saw when I worked in healthcare. I saw old people who, once they started to get a little bit of dementia, the mask started to slip. They started to not become the nice people they'd been for most of their adult lives, or they reverted to kind of being, you know, more childlike and asking about their mothers and stuff like that. But in either case, you are who you are. And we find that society has us put these filters over ourselves, but then when you get old, you tend to lose them. And I think that's what's happening with Biden. Anyway, apparently he's going down to, what is this red thing here? That's interesting. Yeah, the White House had also had to push back on criticism of Joe Biden's handling of the wildfire in Maui above a circle of flames in Gulf Lahaina, Hawaii. So I think that when Joe Biden was saying no comment, what he really should have been saying is that, of course, our hearts go out to these people. We're working on this. We're working with, you know, the FEMA and all these other organizations and trying to make sure that these people get help. Instead, what he did was come out and say they were focused, quote, like a laser, and that these Hawaiian citizens would be receiving the generous gift of $700 per household, while Ukraine is seeing $2,500 per Ukrainian. Absolutely insane to me. Disgusting. I was scrolling Instagram too, and there was some social media account that doesn't really do commentary on politics or anything, and they were talking about how Biden had given no comment, whatever, about Maui. And part of the reason they shared that piece of news was because they're doing a fundraiser to try to raise like something like $70,000 or $65,000 for the residents of Maui. And all of the comments there were like, this is insane. Why are we giving this money to Ukraine? American citizens need help much more than those people, more than those people do. And I was just blown away because as far as I'm concerned, if you can go onto Instagram and find all of these comments that are in agreement with what you personally think, that's really interesting. That's kind of a stunning indictment, because that's actually, I would consider that a very normal, standardized sampling of ordinary people who aren't fully online as much as most of us probably are, and people who aren't reading the news 24/7. Just people who are just looking at the surface level, and what they're saying is, why are we giving all this money to Ukraine when we can't even bring it on ourselves to help American citizens? Now, with that said, if you guys haven't listened to RFK Jr. talk to Tucker Carlson in his most recent episode, you should do that now, because there's a very interesting backstory of Ukraine and Russia with the Kennedys and trying to make that work, and that'll kind of help you understand where Russia is coming from. And what their reticence was to having NATO in Ukraine. All right, you guys, let's talk now about the continued demise of California. Workers in Nancy Pelosi's federal building, the Nancy Pelosi Federal Building in San Francisco, are advised to work from home as crime skyrockets. The federal government issued a stay-home order in an August 4th memo to staffers in this 18-story Nancy Pelosi Federal Building in San Francisco. Oh, good. They named it after her. That's so fantastic. It reportedly advised federal workers to stay home for the foreseeable future due to the dangers that came with commuting to the now overrun neighborhood. The building, which cost taxpayers $144 million to create, because of course it did, houses the former House Speaker's office as well as various agencies that work under Joe Biden. Workers in the federal building, blah, blah, blah. Okay, opened in 2007, renamed after Pelosi this year. Of course, it's adjacent. City's Tenderloin district. Oh my, that's one of the worst districts in San Francisco. Fascinating. Cheryl Campbell, the first woman of color to be sworn as the Department of Health and Human Services Assistant Secretary for Administration, sent the memo on August 4th. In light of the conditions at the Speaker Nancy Pelosi Federal Building, we recommend employees maximize the use of telework for the foreseeable future, she said. Referring to the federal government's zone that covers California and other western states, Campbell added, this recommendation should be extended to all Region 9 employees, including those not currently utilizing telework flexibilities. Wow, so the Democrats are literally saying, don't go outside if you live in San Francisco, because we have screwed the city up so bad. This is such an admission of guilt to me. Really incredibly condemning for them, because that's disgusting, because they are forcing people to live there, to work there. Now they're telling them to telecommute. These are just some of the scenes of the homeless people who live there. The government reportedly advised federal workers to stay home for the dangers that come with commuting to the now overrun neighborhood. Yeah, it's crazy. The filth and squalor at the junction of Jones and Eddy Streets in San Francisco's Tenderloin district, a couple blocks from the federal building, is seen here. Pelosi's spokesperson told the Chronicle in a statement, the safety of workers in our federal buildings has always been a priority for Speaker Emerita Pelosi, whether in the building or on their commutes. Maybe you should change your policy so that people don't have to literally fear for their lives every time they go to work at this glamorous building named the Nancy Pelosi Federal Building. Like, oh my gosh. Downtown footfall in San Francisco is down 65%. The 5-year budget deficit is down $1.3 billion. Stores closed, 95 and more. Office vacancies at 31%. Property tax revenue is down $196 million. And public transport use is fallen 65%. Leanne is saying, Many on Maui don't trust the government for support. They are encouraging donating to the families instead of large nonprofits and government-run organizations. I don't blame them for that. I probably wouldn't donate to FEMA at this point. The pages that I follow on Instagram seem to be much smaller 501c3 organizations. I'm sure that a bunch of Christian organizations have risen to the occasion too, because this is always the case. Nobody ever wants to talk about it, but the Christian church plays a serious role, and especially the Catholic Church plays a very, very big role in making sure that people affected by disasters like this are assisted as much as possible. Yeah, so we have Huntington closed, Brooks Brothers closed, Gorin Bros, DSW, Cocoa Republic, Hilton, Park 55, Abercrombie, Off 5th, Nordstrom Rack. Yep, all of these places closed because the Disney store closed. Jeez. A map reveals the major businesses which have left or have announced they're leaving San Francisco in recent months. Retailers like Whole Foods, Anthropologie, Old Navy, Amazon Go, and Office Depot are among those taking place in the mass exodus. This is crazy to me. And it turns out that it doesn't matter how bad it gets in these cities. These Democrats will never admit that they were in the wrong. St. Miles says, just had an advert jump into your presentation. We are doing something a little different with the ads. I think that it might be a little obnoxious. Let me know if it's really annoying. If you have an ad blocker, that might be able to help you cut down on the number. It's just for the sake of monetization. They have chosen to keep several of my recent videos demonetized for reasons they will not explain to me. This is always the case with YouTube. They absolutely refuse to tell you what you've done wrong, what you can do right next time, etc. It's nonsense, and they keep you in the dark like an abusive relationship so that, man, it's the worst. It truly is, and I need to expand my video reaches on other platforms, but my goodness, I am not in a position, and I do not have the energy to make that happen right now. But I'm going to change gears here, and I really want to talk about this issue of male loneliness and see what's happening. Oh, Bree's here. Hey, Lydia, haven't been able to tune in for a bit. Hope the baby's treating you well. My sister-in-law was due yesterday, so we are waiting on her. Wonderful, wonderful. Hopefully that goes really well, too. I am drained. This baby is sucking it out of me. This is the plan. They just have to eventually start enforcing widespread public order emergency state. Yeah, for sure. Why can't YouTube be kind to you? I don't know. I don't say anything wrong ever. I've never done anything wrong ever. What can I say? U.S. suicide deaths reached a record high in 2022. According to the CDC data. Now, one of the interesting things about this Reuters article is that they do not mention who this is majorly affecting. And here's who it's affecting. The number of people who died by this hit an estimated record 49,000 in 2022, a 2.6 increase over the prior year, government data showed Thursday. Over half of all U.S. suicides in 2022 involved firearms, according to the figures from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, CDC. 9 in 10 Americans believe America is facing a mental health crisis. The new suicide death data reported by CDC illustrated why, said U.S. Health Secretary Xavier Becerra in a statement. He added that many people still believe that asking for help is a sign of weakness. What demographic truly believes, most of all, more than any of the others, that asking for help is a sign of weakness? I notice they're able to make it all the way through this article without ever mentioning who the people most affected by this pandemic of suicide are. But I bet you guys can guess it because you're not stupid. I'm not either. And I knew it even before I looked this up. It's really, really interesting that they're not mentioning who this is. He added that many people, the suicide rate in 2022, 14.9 deaths for every 100,000 people, is 5% higher than the previous record high of 14.2 deaths for every 100,000 people in 2018. Suicide deaths rose from 48,183 in 2021 to an estimated 49,449 in 2022. Yeah, absolutely. It's not cool. And Highly Snipe says, we're having our third boy. I'm super excited. I'm so excited for you guys. Hopefully you'll be able to give us some input into this particular story here, because the demographic in question that Reuters is studiously avoiding mentioning here is, of course, men. It's men. Men are committing a lot more suicide than they were before. And, of course, they try to imply that this is because we have not strict enough gun laws. And I don't think that's the case at all. But I will say, before we move on, one of the things they found when they first started installing gas stoves was that the people who were feeling suicidal in the first place, then turned to using these gas stoves as a way to follow through on that action. Let's continue on to this article. Boys and men are lonelier than ever. What can we do about it? And I am tying this directly to the suicide epidemic because I think that they are 100% one and the same. Are men okay? In all likelihood, they'll never tell you. Only 21% of men say they received emotional support from a friend within the past week, compared to 41% of women, according to the 2021 survey by the Survey Center on American Life. Similarly, just 25% of men say they've said "I love you" to a friend recently, as opposed to 49% of women. It's part of an epidemic of loneliness that director Lucas Daunt said he wanted to explore in his new drama Close, which is an Oscar-nominated for Best Foreign Language Film and follows two inseparable teen boys. We live in a society that tells young men that there are things we validate more than tenderness and vulnerability. Yes, there are things that we validate more than tenderness and vulnerability. Some traits tend to be more feminine traits. Some traits tend to be more masculine traits. That's okay. At the end of the day, that's not the end of the world, and it's something that we need to come to terms with. With that said, I do agree that we're probably not helping boys very much. I think we're kind of doing them a disservice by not teaching them also how to handle these difficult emotions. I think there is still a societal tendency to push boys and to tell them that they need to ignore these feelings that they have. I think that's not for the best. Pardon me, gotta hitch my breath. The movie begins with Leo and Remy during a summer vacation, running, biking, and napping together in an idyllic Belgian countryside. They think nothing of their close connection, sharing beds at sleepovers or resting their heads on each other's shoulders until they return to middle school, where they are teased and called homophobic slurs by their classmates. Self-conscious, Leo starts avoiding Remy and joins a hockey team. Remy, meanwhile, becomes deeply depressed. Daunt was inspired to make the movie after reading psychologist Niobe Way's 2013 nonfiction book Deep Secrets, Boys, Friendships, and the Crisis of Connection. So we're going to hear more from Niobe over the course of the next article, because she is not a good source of information when it comes to men. First of all, she is a female. She's a female, and she's trying to speak to man's issues. And I happen to know that if a man tried to step in and speak to women's issues, you know what they would be saying. They would be crying mansplaining all day long. And I think that you should be saying womansplaining here, because there are factors here that we do not understand, which is part of the reason that I'm pitching this to you guys. When Niobe interviewed all these 13-year-old boys, she realized how lovingly they talked about one another. I really connected to that. There's also a young boy who felt the power of friendship, but then started to fear intimacy as I went through puberty. That was something I'd always thought was very linked to me being queer. Of course, it's all LGBTQ BS. Those are the last two words of that line, by the way, BS. I realized after Way's research that it was not about me being queer, but about me being a man. We need to change possibly the way we think about masculinity, because we either think it's toxic and that it should be more like femininity, or we are telling boys that they have to do all these things that are actually detrimental to their mental health. Some things transcend femininity and masculinity. You do actually have to sometimes talk to people. We are deeply social creatures at the end of the day, and even though guys are less so than women are, it's not something that you can discard without causing serious problems to yourself. It's something that I think we need to talk about to boys. How we think boys should behave. Let's hear what these people have to say. Society's general discomfort with close male friendship is rooted in antiquated ideas of gender and masculinity. Okay, well, that's a strong statement to make. Let's see if they can back this up. From an early age, women are socialized to be more nurturing and relationship-oriented than men, who are often taught to perceive intimacy as effeminate or weak. So, this is the blank slate theory in action. This is Jean-Jacques Rousseau's idea that everyone's basically just the same from birth, and then you just apply the ideas from society, whether society is good or bad, you apply it directly to the child, and then what happens is a direct result of society. Not any inbuilt bias, nothing to do with their gender, nothing to do with their relationship to the world, innate relationship to the world, nothing to do with their genetics, anything like that. It's wrong, and it's part of the reason that the U.S. education system is incredibly failing, like explosively a failure. But at the end of the day, it's possible that we are telling boys that they should be resisting some of these things that they should not be, because whether it's their parents telling them to man up, moms telling sons that boys don't cry, all this other stuff, I always said that if I do have a son, I will not be telling him that boys don't cry, because that's literally just not true. Human beings cry. Sometimes things are sad. Sometimes things need to be sorted out by crying. Crying is one of the steps you can use to sort your emotions and to bring yourself to terms with the way reality is. That's an important part of having emotional regulation and making sure that you are a responsible human being. But let's read on after that. There's all sorts of societal norms that lead men and women in very different directions when it comes to friendship, what function it serves, and what to expect from a friend. Sure, fine. Part of the problem is that young men are encouraged to build shoulder-to-shoulder friendships in team sports or group activities rather than one-on-one relationships. No, this is something I believe firmly, and you guys, please correct me if you think I'm wrong. This is something I believe that men do naturally. Men don't call each other up on the phone to talk about the weather, okay? Something Matt Walsh was mentioning today on his show was that he went on a fishing trip with his friend, and when he came back, his wife was like, so what's going on with their family? What are they up to? What did you guys talk about? And he's like, we didn't really talk about anything. We talked about fishing. I have no idea what's going on with his family. And it's like, there's a fundamentally different approach to relationships that men have to women. I'm pretty sure that Andy, with the guys who used to go and work out every single morning, I think every weekday morning they went when we were in Maryland, there was a crew from work who would go all the time, and I don't think they ever talked about relationships. I don't think they talked about family, nothing like that. They went in, they performed the task, they showed each other how strong and tough they were, and then they went home. And for them, that was super fulfilling. That was something that they really enjoyed doing. I was working on their fitness together, and that was fun for them. And this is, I think, something that women don't understand. And one of the things I want everybody to keep in mind as you're reading this kind of article is that you have to know that these are written from a woman's perspective. And that's not bad and it's not good. It just is what it is. And it's something to be aware of. We're trying to speak to men's issues. We need to consider from the point of view of a man, which means we need to turn off our women hats. We need to take off our women hats and think in terms of, I am not this person. This person is not like me. We have a little bit in common. We're all humans. We're all striving to make life better, etc. We're going about it in very different ways. And you can see that in the way that men form relationships. Like, men tend to want to do things together. They don't want to call each other up and chat. They don't even necessarily want to get a beer together. I remember seeing this really, really funny. This lady shared this picture of a paper that her dad had put together because he was going to the bar with his friends, like a monthly meetup or something. And he's like, I'm going to talk about this. We're going to talk about football. We're going to talk about the state of Bud. We're going to talk about all this other stuff. It was very organized. And I was like, this is what guys do. This is something that comes very, very naturally to women. Not so easy for guys. So if you want to have like a conversation with the dudes, you got to make sure that you have it lined up and ready to go, because it doesn't come naturally to them to just chat about stuff. What they want to do is build something or make something or fight something or destroy something together. And that is the strongest form of team building. I think that's partly what you see in the military. You have a shared enemy. You're up against the same thing together, and it forms some of the strongest male relationships you can see, right? These are the male friendships that last forever. They're guys who were in the military together. They tackled really difficult situations. They tackled maybe basic training together, deployments together, all kinds of losses and difficulties together. And that kind of forged them in the fire and made sure that they were in a position where they felt they could share these kinds of experiences and emotions with each other because they didn't have any women around at the time, maybe. Girls and women tend to feel more comfortable in face-to-face interactions. Some parents might say if they're watching their boys play a lot of sports and coming with another guy and competing with another guy, that might be more typical. Whereas if they're seeing that they have a long private discussion, that would tend to go against gender expectations. Yes, and that is because guys don't usually tend to do that. That's okay. It's just different. It's not a case of going against gender expectations. It's just that men and women are not the same. And our society, we're in 2023, right? We've been civilized for a little while. We've had the Industrial Revolution, etc., whatever. We cannot get it through our heads that men and women are different on a level that we don't really understand. Like, there's a reason that men and women have a wildly different view of pornography. And my personal view is that it's actually unethical, and I don't think it should be a thing that ever happens. But it is a thing that happens, and the fact of the matter is that men tend to use it as a tool, and then they move on. Is it good? Is it bad? I don't know. We won't get into the psychology. I will tell you right now that it does cheapen that relationship and that dynamic of human nature and relationships too. I don't view it as a positive for men or women, but I will say at the end of the day that it is a completely different ball of wax for men than it is for women. Women are extremely emotionally oriented. Women have a much stronger need to bond to their partner. And we know that this is at least partly because women have always had, I will say with personal experience now, the immense pressure and the immense vulnerability of being pregnant to try to atone for. So when women are looking for a partner, they are looking for a partner who's going to be protective and caring and there for the long haul. That's why women care about commitment. And, people can make fun of that fact all they want, but at the end of the day, there is a biological and evolutionary imperative for it. There is a reason. St. Miles is very true. I'll just assume you're referring to everything I said. This username said, my husband told me that it's normal for a man to size up another man when you first meet him. In Andrew Tate's words, is this a one-punch or a two-punch situation? Yeah, so one of the things I've said about Andrew Tate for a while now is that I think he gets the diagnosis correct, but then he gets the solution completely incorrect, because his solution, and in my experience, this is never the right solution, because I've also seen this with anti-feminist commentators. The solution from him is that we need to do what everyone else is doing. We need to do what got us into this problem and into this trouble in the first place, but we need to do it harder and we need to do it more. And we're going to be great at it because we're guys. That doesn't work. It's like anti-feminist commentators who come out and say, you know what we need to fix feminism is more hatred of women. So hatred for men wasn't enough. We need hatred for women now. No. This is exactly like Ibram Kendi saying, you know what we need now to fix racism? More racism. It sounds stupid what Ibram Kendi says it because it is stupid. It's stupid when it's applied by anti-feminist commentators, and it's stupid coming from Andrew Tate. But at the end of the day, Andrew Tate fills a role because young men are looking for role models to tell them what to do. And they really don't have any. You have people like Jordan Peterson, which is awesome. I will refer people to people like Jocko Willink and Joe Rogan. Good, wholesome dudes. Jocko is very, very strongly military background. Joe Rogan is the MMA background. But these, again, are the ways that guys form these relationships, either in the military or with fighting together, which is really funny and interesting. And I don't think that women or the society, our feminized society at large, recognizes how important fighting with each other actually is to guys. This is not something that I would have considered. I don't want to fight with other people. I would like to keep the peace. I certainly don't want to fight with ladies. When women fight, it gets really, really nasty, really, really fast. For guys, that's how you fix a problem. If you have an issue with another guy, go out there and punch them a few times, and then whoever wins. That's the end of the discussion. It seems much simpler, actually, when you look at it from the perspective of a woman. I could be wrong. Again, you guys set me straight. Bree says, yes, I've been arguing all day with that Pearl/Tate type follower. Yeah, I saw you mention something about that. And this is really the issue. These people truly believe that the solution to hatred for men is hatred for women. And it's not. It's just not. It's never going to be. We don't solve hatred with more hatred. And at the risk of sounding like MLK Jr., at the end of the day, that's not how we make that problem go away. We just make it worse. We make it last longer. And I think that the reason these people push it is because it earns them money. Pearl certainly gets a lot of clicks, likes, and views from people who just hate women, and so does Andrew Tate. And if that's how you want to earn your money, fine, but you need to recognize at the same time that you are sacrificing your morals for the sake of $1, which is something that I hate seeing from any quarter, especially for people my age. I think they know better. I think that young people deserve better, and I don't think that this is the way toward truth. All right, you guys, I have a couple solutions that, let's see here. I follow a group on Instagram called Andy's Man Clubs, and it's actually not based on Andy. This is a United Kingdom organization that has men's meetings. We meet Mondays at 7 p.m. except bank holidays. We are here for you. At Andy's Man Club, we want to eliminate the stigma surrounding mental health and create a judgment-free, confidential space where men can be open about the storms in their lives. We aim to achieve this through weekly, free-to-attend, peer-to-peer support groups for men aged over 18. Watch the video below to find out why. Before we continue, I want to ask you guys if you think that's the way to fix the problem. I have nothing but respect for these guys. Andy was apparently a guy who ended up committing suicide because he lacked this kind of support network that they're now trying to give other men. Good for them. Good for them. Hashtag that one man is our promise to you, our volunteers, our attendees and supporters, that no matter how quickly we grow, how many awards we win, how many partnerships we strike up, or how many clubs we open, we will always remain true to our original goal, to be able to provide support to that one man in his time of need and to help him see that his tomorrow can be better than today. Andy's story. Let's see if we can listen to this. Can't tell if this is muted. Yeah, of course it is. Why is it muted? Can't tell why. There we go. Well, apparently it's muted, and here we just see a gentleman talking about what they're up to. Let me see if I can get it to make some noise, although I can't really turn my mic, so I might not be able to get you guys to listen to it.
I want to do something where I could
let me go back.
A group or a club called Andy's Man Club, and the reason I came up with it because I've been passionate about mental health for a long time. 3 months ago, my brother-in-law died by suicide, and I want to do something where I could personally contribute and make a group and go and help other men, come up with a plan where guys could come together and talk. And if it ends up being like tonight's the first night, so I'm quite nervous about tonight and who turns up, but the outreach that I've received has been unbelievable, and it's so rewarding now looking at what we've done and why we've set it up along with Andy's mum. We've got a purpose behind it, which is mental health and Andy, and that his name can live on and create a legacy and helping. And if we can move this to Bradford and Leeds and so on and other.
So I don't know if you're able to understand him because he has a very heavy accent. He's a very regional British dude. He's saying that his brother-in-law ended up committing suicide, which is making me very sad. I'm going to end up crying if I keep talking about this. But he basically is just saying, I just want guys to be able to have a place to sit and talk. And he's like, tonight's our first night. We'll see how it goes. I'm looking forward to it because if we can help even, one person, it'll be worth it. And they go on to say, we're a bunch of blokes having a chat over a brew and a biscuit. So this is very, very distinctly British, and their hand sign is the OK symbol. It's okay to talk. That's their catchphrase. In mid-2016, 9 men met in a small room in the stereotypical Yorkshire town of Halifax with the simple aim of talking through their issues and helping each other deal with their mental health. All in attendance were agreed there was magic in that room that had to be shared. This is the start of a movement that's grown faster than anyone first involved could have imagined. Fast forward 7 years, Andy's Man Club has now groups at over 130 locations across 3 counties in the UK. So again, this is specifically in the UK, but I really think that the US needs a parallel for sure. Username says, I think men need camaraderie, and it's a thing women simply don't understand, but I don't know because I'm a woman. Yeah, I don't either, for sure. For sure. Yeah, which is kind of part of the reason that I'm pitching it to the chat, because a lot of them are, I'm assuming, male, because a majority of YouTube users are male. Andy's Man Club takes its name from Andrew Roberts, a man who sadly took his own life aged 23 in early 2016. Andy's family had no inkling that he was suffering or struggling to the extent that he would do this, and as a result looked deeper into male suicide and men's mental health. They soon discovered that male suicide is the biggest killer of men under 50, with male mental health surrounded by well-ingrained cultural stigma in the UK. It's very much the same in the US. In fact, I would say it's pretty much everywhere in the West. Something to consider. Elaine Roberts and Luke Ambler are Andy's mom and brother-in-law. Together they came up with the idea of Andy's Man Club, a group where men aged 18 and above can speak openly about their mental health in a judgment-free, non-clinical environment. Groups now operate nationwide and are completely volunteer-led, with the vast majority of group facilitators having first interacted with Andy's Man Club, where they came through the door as a service user. That's very cool. With the service used on a weekly basis by over 3,000 men and an army of 900 plus facilitators, the movement is always continuing to grow on a week-by-week basis. Andy's Man Club is a very relaxed atmosphere once you get settled. The hardest part is taking the first step through the door, but ask any of the guys that have done it, and they will tell you they're glad that they did. Good for them. Very happy to hear it. So at first I was a little bit skeptical as I was thinking about it, and I was like, this seems really cool, and I appreciate where they're coming from, but at the same time, is this actually going to work for guys? Because it just kind of sounds like a form of talk therapy, and we know that guys don't really resonate with that. It seems most important to them. Matthew Merrill says, don't they know the OK sign has been deemed a racist dog whistle by the Anti-Defamation League? Yes. And because they're in the UK, they don't care, and they're actually using it for something super positive. So I'm super happy for them. And I appreciate their catchphrase, right? It's okay to talk. It is, absolutely. And again, this gets down to the relational nature of human beings. This is something we can't escape. I know guys might think it would be easier if we could kind of get away from that. But without feminizing it, we can safely say that we do actually have to talk to each other sometimes. And we run into problems, and it's easy to feel like we're alone. You have no idea if other people are going through what you're going through. And sometimes just knowing that others are struggling with what you're struggling with is incredibly helpful. And then they can tell you, here's what I did when I was in your situation. Here's how I made it better, right? Alrighty. Here's another organization that's supposed to be helping guys based in the UK. Happy and Healthy Men, connection, conversation, creation. That's what joining a men's shed is all about. They're called men's sheds, which I think is great. You guys can all go to the sheds. Banishing loneliness and isolation isn't easy, which is why men's sheds encourages local communities to come together to build, fix, and restore projects as well as themselves. So this has a hands-on component, which I really like. They are doing something with whatever these men's sheds are. We're going to read more about it. Excuse me, hiccups again as always. Let's see if we can learn more here. Estimated 130-something thousand people. Quite simply, all things shed. Learn all you need about starting sheds, finding sheds in the wild, plus how to maintain and manage one. I do have questions about sheds. What do you guys do? What do you guys get up to? What happens if I want to start a shed? I'm really curious now. So we can have donations. Here we go. This is a guy who's working on a project, which I think is a great way to do this. So it's an ambassador program. Whatever else they do, work with us. Okay, so you can work alongside them. Cool beans. I think that's great. I want them to explain more to me about who they are, because I love the idea of them actually working on this stuff. Men's sheds, or sheds, are similar to garden sheds, a place to pursue practical interests at leisure, to practice skills and enjoy making and mending. There you go. The difference is that garden sheds and their activities are often solitary in nature, while men's sheds are the opposite. They're about social connection and friendship building, sharing skills and knowledge, and of course, a lot of laughter. Andy says men don't shed. Men certainly do shed, although he wouldn't know because it's always behind him, and I'm always just noticing it as he goes. They don't shed as bad as women. It's true. Sheds are whatever the members, or shedders as we call them, want them to be. Although labeled sheds, they're often not sheds at all. They can be empty offices, portable cabins, warehouses, garages, and in at least one case a disused mortuary. Oh my. Some sheds are purpose-built workshops, but rarely start out that way. Many don't have premises at all in the beginning and instead form a group that meets regularly for the social connection, company, and camaraderie until they can find somewhere to kit out with tools. So, while they have this conversational aspect to them, the shed clubs are focused on doing things. And I think this really would resonate with guys. In fact, I'm kind of curious now if we have something similar in the US. And I personally love that in the UK, they're just like, men's sheds, menssheds.org. Go check it out. Do you have a sheds club near you? Go meet up with the guys. That's really great. Activities in sheds vary greatly, but you can usually find woodworking, metalworking, repairing and restoring, electronics, model buildings, or even car building in a typical shed. Sheds typically attract older men, but many have younger members and women too. Interesting. Whatever the activity, the essence of a shed is not a building, but the connections and relationships between its members. Yeah. So something cool that I could see happening over here in the US would be, for example, putting together a shed where guys can go to put together all that IKEA furniture that they bought with their wife several months ago that they now need to put together before the baby comes along. This is something that Andy really has not been wanting to do. I need to kind of nag him to do it with me and when we both have time. But I think this would be something that would be really helpful and really necessary. If you guys have any other ideas, let me know. Andy says, oh yeah, that's not true. Matthew says, us old men shed. Yeah, there you go. The closest thing to a men's shed in the US I can think of are maker spaces. Interesting. Mr. Proxy says, I'm skeptical, seems kind of soy. Why does it seem soy? Because at the end of the day, guys will tell you that they are lonely, right? And that Unfortunately, the solution to loneliness is to talk to other people and kind of reach out to them and kind of let yourself be a little bit vulnerable, right? And maybe ask for help. And I'm not trying to feminize it. This is something that I'm really pushing against this. I don't know. Mr. Roxy says, I'm a man. If I need a shed built, I get my buddy. I don't join some help group. That's the point. These guys don't have buddies, right? There is no male community. This is really something that's fallen apart. One of the other articles I was reading is talking about why guys end up being so isolated. And they say part of the problem is that in the UK especially, guys tend to live in single bedroom homes, and they don't view this as a way to keep in touch well with their kids. They're forced to move far away from their families and their other friends. Andy says hacker spaces. Mr. Proxy says to talk to other soys. If you don't want to talk to anyone, you're going to be lonely. That's just something that you have to come to terms with. If you're okay being lonely, that's fine. I'm looking at the broader demographic issue that is men saying that they're lonely. Men saying that they don't have any friends. They have no community. They feel like no one will care if they die. And one of the things that has brought this to my attention was the fact that men have been committing a vast majority of suicides. I don't like that. And you can say it's soys all you want, but if you're talking to someone, it's going to be better than talking to no one. And if you don't like the people you're talking to, you can go talk to a different group of people. I would say that churches are very important. I think Andy's right about hacker spaces. I was telling him when we went to Lowe's the other day that I was talking to, or when I was younger, we had these little workshops where kids could go and put together woodworking stuff and you could paint it, and I thought it was really fun. And it's important to, as Andy says, have a real hobby, and I think that's true too. But at the end of the day, I think that if you have something like furniture that you need to assemble, I think that'd be a great way to do it, because then you'd be helping your family, but you also wouldn't have to be around them all the time. And you would also be able to meet up with these guys. And one of the things that I think is really kind of helpful for guys is to have something to focus on while you're talking about what's going on in your life. So if you've been having a really hard time at work and you're working with a bunch of guys, we're going to discard the concept of soy. These are all guys about your age, all guys who are going through similar hard times. Many of these guys have probably been divorced. Many of these guys probably have kids who have to come a long way to visit them, where they don't see their kids at all. They've been screwed by the court system. They're having a hard time at work. They're having a hard time with many different aspects of life. If you have a project you're working on, I think it would be for guys a lot easier to talk about this stuff. Let me know what you guys think. And House Snipe says, I don't have a shed. I have a grass lawn, greenhouse, and garden to attend to. Yeah, there you go. You don't have to have a shed. This is something for guys who want to do this, and I think it's a great project. Again, if you don't feel lonely, you don't have to go out of your way to find friendship, but if you do feel lonely, there's stuff that you can do. And I personally think that's a wonderful thing. I don't think that men should have to feel like they have to be lonely just because they're men, and that gets back to teaching guys that they shouldn't have to feel like women for saying, hey, I actually have some bad feelings. Like, I don't feel good about what happened to me today. I'm not sure why. It's affecting me. I just would like to make something, or I'd like to punch someone, or I'd like to go fishing with someone. We don't have to say anything. We can just hang out, whatever. I think for loneliness for guys is much different than loneliness is for women. I know that social media hasn't made any of this better for either of us, but I think especially for guys, because we don't understand it, we've placed so much more emphasis on women and what they need. I think it's really important for us to think about what's going on with guys and how they can make things better. And I want to put the responsibility for fixing this, or kind of trying to make an effort in this direction, on guys. Because women should not be coming in and fixing problems for you. Guys don't want that. The women who do want that are not looking out for your best interest. And if you view it as a problem, if you see this as something that should be fixed, because part of what sparked this for me, and I'm getting ready to wrap up here, don't worry. Part of what sparked this conversation for me was listening to June, Shoe on Head, talking about male loneliness, and I went through and I read the comments, and it was just young men after young man talking about how he's lonely. He doesn't date, he plays video games, he smokes marijuana, all this other stuff that just dulls the senses and keeps you kind of, sated and sedated. They don't want to work. They don't want to leave. They want to stay at home and play video games. and they're like, this is incredibly unfulfilling. I want something that I'm working toward. I want a purpose. I want a family. If you want those kinds of things, you need to go out and learn how to socialize with other people, because at the end of the day, here's something for younger men. I think if you want to connect with the opposite gender, you need to connect fully with your own gender first and figure out what it is that you can do to make yourself more appealing socially to other human beings. Because again, that commonality that we have between men and women, you need to be able to talk to people, which means you need to ask questions. It means you need to know where to find people. You need to volunteer. You need to find locations where you can serve and have something that you are working on together that will help you build those friendships. And I know we will have guys who say, I don't need that. That's not a big deal. I don't need friends. I'm not lonely, blah, blah, blah. And it's great if you're fully established, if you have your own little happy family and don't feel a huge need for outside friends. But at the end of the day, there are guys out there who really, really do. And I think that this is definitely something that we should all kind of try to think about ways to fix, because lost men, lost boys are not a good thing. They're not good for society. They're not good for themselves. This is part of the reason they're such a huge issue in suicides. Matthew says they need challenges in life. I agree. St. Miles says they need to man up. What does that look like? Does that mean talking less about what's happening to you? Does that mean that you don't matter? Because I do think that these guys matter. It's just very, very hard for them to explain what that looks like. And sometimes it can be just easier to go fishing and not talk about this stuff. Username says, in my opinion, weed is a huge issue because it dampens people's drive and they become complacent with mediocrity. Yeah. So it can be really kind of hard to figure out if weed is a cause or an effect of this stuff, because it can be an effect. Once you start to look at the world in kind of a depressed way, it can be easier to just say, I'm going to retreat. There's nothing worth fighting for, and especially since we don't have wars to fight right now, I think it's probably easier for guys to just walk away from all this and say, I'm never going to get a relationship. I'm such a loser. I'm going to use porn. I'm going to use weed. I'm going to use video games. I'm going to work a minimum wage job. I don't care. I'll live in my parents' basement. My life is just a loss. It doesn't really matter. My life has no purpose, no meaning, nothing to fight for. And I don't think that's how it's supposed to be for anyone, but especially not for young guys who need that kind of push and drive. I think that our young men deserve much better, and I think that we should be thinking about ways to fix this problem. However, it is now 7:57. I'm shocked I was able to make it through for a full hour. Thank you guys so much, those of you who stuck with me throughout this little rant. This is something that strikes me as important because I have 3 brothers, lots of male cousins, lots of friends who have brothers, uncles, dad, etc. And we knew people growing up. We knew guys who were very successful who ended up committing suicide, and it was just so heartbreaking every time and so hard for me to wrap my head around. But obviously an issue that needs to be addressed. Thank you guys so much for joining me. Remember what we say every evening. Stay safe, stay well, stay out of target. Until next time, bye guys. How's it going?